Welcome back to the Anti-Meta Meta Club. This week's race V has a very clear meta, and it also has a 600% credit payout increase, so I've got just the car to beat the meta and make you some cash. Let's get into it. The anti-meta car of the week is the 4C. Surprisingly enough, it's not just a handling car. It has enough power that it can stay in slip with the Viper and then eventually make a pass. It somehow has a really high top speed despite the fact that it doesn't have very good acceleration, but it's got such grip coming out of the corners and it's so nimble that that doesn't end up being much of a problem. I managed to get a 140.783, which is just good enough for 71st. Now, there are a few other cars in the top 100, but as you can see, it's absolutely dominated by the Viper. I actually can't remember the last time I saw a car this dominant in the Group 3 class, but fear not, it's not invincible, and we do have options. Make sure you wind out 5th for as long as you can before shifting up to 6th. You're going to lose a couple miles per hour, but if you don't shift up, you're going to hit the rev limiter and you're going to lose like 5 or 6 miles per hour. Looking for the 100 meter board, I want you to hit the brakes right before that, and you're going to stay just on the red and white. Do not touch the blue because it's going to give you dirty tires. Turning in just before the end of the red and white curb, make sure you don't hit the inside as you trail brake in 2nd gear. Make sure you're also in 3rd gear before you then get on the throttle, and you do want to get heavily on that throttle. Of course, you want to avoid the sand trap and don't touch any of the curbs after. These couple kinks leading up to the next braking zone aren't really even considered corners. Just make sure you don't go up in the curbs and you should be totally fine. Put yourself on the curbing right before the sand trap and you're going to brake just about halfway between the sand and the 50 meter board. Downshift to 3rd before turning in and turn in just after the beginning of the sand. Rather than continuing to decelerate and try to sacrifice the exit of this left-hander, carry as much speed as you possibly can, getting just to the right of the center of the track. Sneak as much throttle as you possibly can before the nose of your car gets to the grass that starts on the right after the sand. Immediately trail brake in, dipping down to 1st to get the car to rotate, then back up to 2nd. If you use too much curb, like I did right here, the car's going to bounce, and every single bounce means that you're not going to be able to actually put the power down. If I didn't bounce there, I probably would have gone maybe a half a tenth faster. For the next corner, we're not actually going to shift out of 4th gear. You might hit the rev limiter, but it's not going to have that much of an effect. When you see these little white posts that are attached to the fence, you're going to see the second one after the 50 right here, and as you pass that, that's when you're going to hit the brakes. Immediately trail braking and turning in 3rd gear, you're going to look for these marshals here on the other side of the track, and right as you pass those guys is when you should hit the apex. It's very difficult to time this right, and you're probably going to want to hit a late apex no matter what. Always err on the side of a later apex. Sticking to the inside as it curves to the right, you're then going to just let the car go pretty much in a straight line, not really following the curve of the road too much. You're going to hit this little apex right here, if you can even consider it that, and then set up on the right for your next braking zone. Looking for the 100 meter board that's hanging above the track, you're going to hit the brakes right before it. You can move on to the excess concrete that's on the right side of the track, but I've been avoiding it. It seems to make the braking distance extend just a little bit. Wait for an entire car length beyond the 50 meter board before starting to turn in. You're going to dip down to 1st gear at the last second before then jumping back up to 2nd gear and then getting on the throttle heavily. The next few kinks in the road are just barely there. You're just going to straight line all the way up until this part when you see the red and white on the fence, and then you're going to move to the left to prepare yourself for this next turn in. Looking for this sign right here, you're not going to lift or touch the brakes. You're going to turn in and just try to barely stay on the track right here. In between this extra bit of concrete and the blue and orange barrier here on the right is when you're going to start touching the brakes. You want to turn in right at the beginning of the blue and orange barrier. You want to brake just very briefly and then come entirely off the brakes, add more steering to get as close to the fence as you possibly can, and then fully get on the throttle. I actually completely missed the apex there, and I think I probably lost at least a half tenth. Once again, looking for the 100 meter board, you're going to wait until you're actually directly underneath it before you then hit the brakes. I don't actually mind using the concrete runoff, that excess bit of concrete on the right. It doesn't seem to affect the car too much in this specific corner. What we're going to look for as we go for the apex is this stop sign. The stop sign is a really good place to look for the apex. And as you can see, I actually completely missed it. You want to be in 2nd gear before you get on the throttle. And again, that's another place where I lost at least a half a tenth, maybe even more. As we finish the lap, make sure that you're staying all the way to the left until you get to those yellow chevron signs and then just turn in, making sure you use as much of that curve as you can. And I want you to make sure that you are revving this car out as much as it will possibly go. It really loves the revs. I'm going to focus on just a couple of the things on this lap that have seemed to trouble me over the years of racing this track. This corner right here is really easy to hit the apex just slightly too early. You don't want to treat it like it's a late apex either though. You want to hit just in the middle and you want to continue trail braking all the way up to the apex. What happens is a lot of people come off the brakes before they hit the apex and then their car hasn't rotated enough, so when they get on the throttle they just understeer themselves off the track. For this quick switchback, this left and right, it's much more important to carry speed through the entirety of it rather than sacrificing the left to get a really good run on the right-hander, because this full throttle section isn't very long. You've got to make sure you get on the throttle in one motion, but it's also really easy to go way beyond the line. The trick is to really gradually decelerate all the way to the apex and then fully get on that throttle when you know that you've got a shot without hitting the wall. This next corner is really tight, and you do have to get down to first gear, or at least you should get down to first gear to get the car to rotate, but it's not a hairpin. And if you treat it like a hairpin, you're probably going to decelerate too much. You've got to carry as much speed as you possibly can and then get on that throttle really early. The blind left kink that's coming up in a few corners is probably the hardest corner on the track. It's one of the hardest corners in all of Gran Turismo. Make sure you're setting up by staying full throttle, and when you do turn in and brake, you want to be off the brake as soon as you possibly can. Get the car turned in even more after you come off the brakes, and then full throttle while still continuing to turn to the left. A lot of people just brake way too much, or they don't brake at all, hoping that they can just lift, and that's just a little bit too slow. You want to brake, turn in even more after you come off the brakes, and then full throttle while you continue steering to the left. You can do it. I know it's one of the hardest corners ever, and I've crashed there so many times, but once you get the rhythm down, you'll be able to nail it consistently. As you are no doubt aware, this is a very short race. Of course, it is race B, and we expect it to be short, but yeah, it's a very short race. That means there are not a lot of opportunities to do anything in the race, so your best bet is to qualify as well as you possibly can, and then of course you should be defending against many of the Vipers. But I'm going to show you that not only can you defend against the Viper, you can successfully attack the Viper, and you can do both at the exact same time. The Alpha 4C has been known as a handling car. It absolutely is a handling car, but for whatever reason, I think it's probably because a combination of the total power as well as the aerodynamics, it has fantastic top end. It has a really fast high speed. It just takes forever to get there. Luckily, since it's so agile and it has so much grip in the rear, it's not that hard to keep up a lot of momentum. And then of course, if you're already going pretty fast, it doesn't take that long to go even faster. Since it's incredibly light, it's also very, very good on the brakes. So even if you have the brake mouse all the way to the right, you can outbrake any of the Vipers pretty easily. The worst part, however, is definitely going to be the start. If you are starting anywhere towards the front, I suggest immediately moving to the left and defending as soon as the race starts. If you find yourself starting in the back, it's actually going to be a bonus because you get to watch the chaos unfold in front of you and then position your car accordingly. Turn 1 in any sim race or race is going to be chaotic, especially when it comes to Gran Turismo, because the matchmaking is kind of funny right now, so there are lots of different skills in every single split. But this car is very agile, and like I said, you're going to be pretty far behind if you're starting from the back, so you're going to have a really good opportunity to just see what's happening. One of the toughest parts about driving a handling car against the more powerful, power-driven cars like the Viper is if you follow them too closely through the corners, you are likely to either run into them as they brake early or lose your momentum, and while they can just put the power down, you're going to not have a lot of options once you lose that momentum. If you find yourself behind a Viper and you are very close, I suggest braking in a different line even if you're not planning on passing. You might surprise yourself with how late you brake compared to them, and if you're not following directly behind them, you're not going to run into them. You're also going to be able to brake a lot more efficiently, so even if you are on the inside and you brake later than them, you should be able to stop yourself before running into them. It's going to take some practice to get used to the differences between this car and the other ones you're racing, but this car is well equipped to do whatever you need against any of these cars, especially the Viper. That super fast kink is always really deadly. And of course, you're going to see a lot of people ghosting, a lot of people crashing. So just keep your head on a swivel. Try to make sure that you are really aware of what people are doing and what people might do. As you can see, I was trying to move to the right to give myself an opportunity to pass this Ferrari, but then there was a ghost, so I tried to kind of avoid the ghost. The Ferrari tried to move, and luckily I was able to jam on the brakes, and it wasn't too much of an issue. Now, as you can see, if I am fully in slipstream with this car, even a Viper in slipstream can't seem to catch me. Then if we move to the inside, we can brake deeper. However, that Viper tried to brake even deeper than I could, which of course is never going to work. It almost pushed me off track, stayed on track, and then he pushed me out of the mess. That was really unlucky, followed by really lucky. And I think it's all because the 4C can, like I keep saying, brake super, super, super deep. It's really, really agile. And of course, I didn't have a lot of power coming out of that corner, but the Viper helped me out there. I do think you'll see as the race goes on that you can definitely brake that late with the 4C, even with the overspeed, and there's not going to be any issue. And you're probably going to notice a lot of people, especially people in the Viper, are going to be outbraking themselves, which is why he hit me into that corner. I don't think it was his fault. Well, actually, sorry, it's his fault. I don't think he did it on purpose. So no harm, no foul, except I guess everyone else had to pay for the fact that he rocketed me forward and then did it again. We were about 1.3 seconds behind them at the beginning of this lap, and it took a little bit less than half of a lap to then fully catch up to them. Now, on the straights, it's very difficult to do anything against two Vipers who are working together, or a Viper that has slipstream from another Viper, but as you can see, it's definitely not impossible, and as soon as you get past turn 1, for the rest of the track pretty much, you are able to stick with them. If you find two people battling in this switchback, it's really important to just give them space and then try to get a really good opportunity to then cut back and get a good exit going onto this little straight right here. They didn't lose nearly as much momentum as I thought they would, so I just got myself really close, and as you can see, I can definitely beat a Viper out of that corner, but I can't beat it on the straight without help of the slipstream, especially if the Viper itself has slipstream. Now you're going to see me move around a lot into the braking zone here, and it's just like I said before, I'm not actually trying to pass. I'm trying to make sure that if he brakes a lot earlier than I am, then I'm going to be able to avoid him. Because even if he brakes early and then I brake a lot later, I should be able to stop my car entirely before he then turns in, and you should be able to avoid any incidents like that. This car can brake so much deeper than the Viper that you can get away with all sorts of things, including just going for opportunities that may not actually exist, and sometimes people just outbrake themselves, and suddenly you have an opportunity. As you can see here, I once again braked on the inside, hoping that if he braked early, I wouldn't run into him, and luckily, he braked just as late as he possibly could without running the cars in front. Of course, that ended up making it so I lost a lot of ground on these cars, and that's going to happen a lot on the front straight, but as soon as we get past turn 1, you're going to see that we can catch right back up and then once again start putting the moves on these guys. If I was better prepared for what actually did end up going down, I would have just followed the Viper into that corner and then tried to get a really good exit, but I wasn't quite sure what to expect, so sacrificing the exit there, letting them get away for just a little bit of time, didn't matter too much, as you can see, because once again, we are completely in the mix with these three Vipers. Like I mentioned in the last lap, this chicane, this little switchback right here is a really good place to set yourself up and then just try to go for a really good exit, because if people are battling here, they're going to be going a lot slower than they could if, of course, they weren't battling. And this car is so nimble that you can actually change lines and still go even faster than the meta car or most of the other cars. Now, as you can see, speaking of changing lines, I was following the outside, then I switched to the inside, and I was able to do so with so much momentum that I then caught the slipstream of the pink Viper and I ended up passing two of them. Even with just a little bit of slipstream, half of my car is actually out of the slipstream, I'm able to go just as fast, if not faster than the Viper, and I was able to go all the way on the outside, leading to this not quite a hairpin. Now, I held back just a little bit because I wasn't quite sure if I could trust that guy. If I knew that I could trust him, which I could, then I would have been able to get on the throttle a lot earlier and possibly beat him out of that corner. But since I couldn't, and we had another Viper hot on my tail, I decided to defend all the way to this braking zone. He unfortunately ran into me, so I had to brake a lot more than I usually would have to, but I still had the slipstream from the pink Viper ahead. For whatever reason, that Viper thought that he could outbrake me. I don't know if it was just a big mistake or he actually thought he could pull that off, but he took out the pink Viper in front of me, and so I got a free position. This is the kind of chaos that you can definitely expect in these races, pretty much anywhere. This is EMEA, the fastest region, but it is late morning, so I guess not a lot of people are racing. Now, after all that, I was kind of gun-shy. I was really nervous, so I was driving in my rear view. I was watching the guy behind, which meant that I completely missed my braking point. I had to stay on the brakes for a long time, go all the way to first, exit in second rather than third, and despite all of that, I still exited fast enough that he wasn't close enough to do anything. And as you've seen from the previous laps, I was able to immediately lose him through the chicane right here. As you most likely know, battling that much over that many laps is just going to slow us down, so the next guy was 2.5 seconds ahead still. So we're going to fast forward to the end of the race so we can see how close I was able to get to that guy. After cutting off nearly a second, I almost got deep into this corner, deep enough into this corner that I could then get the slipstream from this guy. I had it for just a brief second, but the Viper was too powerful and I couldn't quite pull it off. Because of that really messed up first corner, I also didn't get a very good fastest lap, or my personal fastest lap, but this car is absolutely capable of mid 41s even without slipstream. Even though this race is incredibly short, I got all the way to 6th place from 16th place, 10 positions in 5 laps. That felt really good, and I do think that I showcased what this car can do both attacking and defending against the Viper. Thank you for watching my video. If you like what you saw, please don't forget to like and subscribe, and of course, I'll be making another one of these guides every single week. To finish off, I'm going to leave you with a look at my current members. I love every one of you. Thank you.